got a little video to play first before it starts, which just shows sort of, sorry, is the video starting? Which will show sort of our journey through esports when we started in 2014. Video. So, powerful intro. I'm Daniel Chung, I'm co-founder of M&M Gaming. It's a premier esports club that operates in the UK. And I know earlier we had Adrian, who was CEO of Enthusiast Gaming, owns Luminosity. That's what we call a tier 1 organisation. We're probably more at a national level. So what do? We pride ourselves on building teams that can compete on an international level. Our most recent success being in Rainbow Six, where we took a team from the grassroots level and went through the ESL path to pro, straight from the national leagues to the pro league within 6 months. Even more recently, our second iteration of the team, we took another grassroots team straight through the invitational qualifiers, beating teams like G2, Team Vitality along the way. I also run TLC Studios, a creative agency that creates or focuses on esports content, which works regularly with big brands such as ESL, Red Bull. But today we're going to focus on sort of like the realities that I, as an esports team owner, face. It's not often highlighted in the media, and it's sort of what will highlight what we'll create in the space today. So, as an esports team, one of the first things that we do is obviously we have to select a game to choose. How do we select a game? Well, obviously we want games which can expand sort of our fan base. So numbers is the game, but it's quite simple to say that yes, numbers will bring it in, but there are a number of factors that sort of affect that. One of the first factors, and one of the major ones which hits the headlines, is franchises versus non-franchises, obviously. The eye-watering price tag just to enter millions and millions of dollars is what closes off the space for a lot of teams, including myself. But that's not to say they don't have their place in the space, because franchises eliminate a lot of the uncertainty that teams might face in the space. So you could be sort of like a budding team that may have climbed the ranks and reached, I know, the LCS. But then you'd have to expand your sort of support to be able to support an international level team, which is more resources, houses, wherever it may be. You run the risk of relegation, which obviously can topple your team just as quickly as you made it. For example, that Rainbow Six roster reached that pro league in just 6 months. A typical business deal takes 12 months, 18 months. How do you build that quick enough to support that team when they're doing so well? So when it comes to franchises, it is quite a controversial topic. It closes off that sort of path to pro that everyone loves, that underdog that just goes through right until the end. Another thing that we always look for is publisher support. So we compete in Rainbow Six League of Legends. These games have a lot of publisher support, whether it's through third parties like ESL or directly with the publishers themselves, Riot. when we operate in the leagues, we have open channels where we discuss issues or problems that we may have, and then we'll address them and keep addressing them, working with them. That is a very, very important point because we have data that the organizers might not have, which will improve the industry in ways that they can't figure out. So aside from sort of publisher support, we also have, the game itself. Earlier, another speaker mentioned a game has to be easy to learn, but very hard to master. So in essence, you should be able to understand it very easily, but also have enough depth such that you can, create sort of plays that are unbelievable, create those hype moments that we all live for, we all watch esports for. Earlier another speaker said, like, there's no sort of reason to participate in live stadiums, but I often, when I speak to people who aren't engaged in the space, I will show them maybe my favorite clip, my favorite players of all time. And the number one thing that I always point out to them is the electrifying audience in the background. I went to ESL 1 Birmingham and I loved it. I know nothing about Dota 2, but the audience was fantastic, and I would go there for that every time. So, if we think about the space as it is entertainment. Entertainment to the core. Esports isn't sort of like the be or end all, it's sort of the 5% of us only engage with it. So if the game isn't entertaining to watch, I can think of a few. PUBG. There may be people who have watched PUBG but find it very difficult to watch. League of Legends is fun to watch. You have lots of flashing lights, but the core of the game is sometimes difficult to understand. The easiest games to understand are obviously CSGO, Rainbow Six. It's easy. Two teams are fighting out to complete a set of objectives. So that's basically what we face when we decide to choose a game. Obviously, we'd like to compete in as many games as we want, but fundamentally, our resources are limited. So outside of games themselves, it's like, how do we choose players? Players, there's millions of them. How do we pick out the top 0.000 how many percentages? It's easy to say that you're very good at a game, but there are sort of skills that become important that aren't very apparent. How do we keep on building these award-winning teams, these teams that keep driving their way through, against all odds, against all the support that the other teams might get? And quite frankly, it comes down to very soft skills, teamwork, their attitude. And these are sort of the qualities and attributes that we look for. In addition to that, content is a very key thing. You'll notice that the slideshow is scrolling through a whole series of content because we believe that content is at the core of what an esports team should be creating. We are entertaining the audience. That's what we are. We use games as the medium to entertain. I could be one of the few teams that go against the grain and go, we need to win, we need to win, we need to win. That's not the case. It's easy, we can win if we want to. So we focus on the content instead. But there are some sort of problems that the industry faces. Obviously, the industry is quite a young one. Being a young industry, it means that there are a lot of sort of players out there. It's not consolidated, it's not mature. We're one of many teams in the UK that operate in the scene, and I'm sure we won't be the last. I think one of the problems that there exists is sort of lack of information. Information, as a lot of speakers have pointed out today, is key to how we develop space. Simple things sort of like, data that's very important to us is what engages our audience. So that includes what that might involve is like finding out what the audience cares about. For example, one of the reasons why we compete in League of Legends, despite it being so complex, is that it's a game that caters to everyone. It has art, so it can capture people who are interested in art, storytelling, anime, whatever it may be. So we like to emulate that by telling stories in our own way, through graphics, through videos, through social media, and have fun doing it. The most important thing is having fun, because community in esports is the most important thing. Just like James Dean said, the community can bite back at you if they don't like what you're doing, just as much as they can support you if they love what you're doing. I don't know if any of you know Eminem or have heard of Eminem in the past. Anyone? No. So quite recently, I think we managed to get trending on Twitter on Star Wars release night, because we were an underdog team nobody heard of that went on through to beat G2 and Team Vitality, and people loved it. The hashtag UK Massive now belongs to us. So what we need to sort of do in the space, or what we need to do, is that we need to collaborate more. With information, whether it's with information, whether it's with tournament organizers, because we are sort of operating in such a way that there isn't, well, everyone's sort of operating and doing their own thing and hoping for the best. And that is not sort of like the ideal way to go about it, especially when you have certain economic problems, such as the market for lemons. One of the problems that we face as a team is how do we distinguish ourselves? None of you in this room have heard of me today or our team, and that's a problem. Like, we're one of the best teams in the UK, and you haven't heard of it. But you'll have heard of other teams that, like Fnatic or Endpoint or whoever it may be. And sorry, I think it's sort of all good and well as well. Like for me to sort of talk to you about what teams face and have a guess at what you might want to know. But I think what I might do now is just open up to a Q&A, because there are questions that you might have, whether it's how do I deal with players, how do I find a team, how do I choose a game, how do I decide what content to make that you might have. So with a few minutes left on the clock, I'm going to open up to Q&A.
Okay. Do you guys have questions? Yes. You're my favorite question person today.
Yeah.
You mentioned about how you decide which games to specialize. Have you thought about mobile games, seeing as it's kind of cheaper to...
Mobile gaming are an interesting one. They do have sort of numbers behind them, but I find that with a lot of things, information is quite difficult to come by. We do get like a lot of applications from mobile gamers from Asia, which is where it's probably the biggest, and they want to obviously be part of the team. The difficulty is separating like good teams from the bad. How do we actually know that they're great or bad? Usually I always speak to a team before I decide to pick them up. On top of that, like it doesn't serve the market of sponsors that we bring on. We primarily have been focusing on PC, but that might change in the future. It depends on how it is. Especially, I don't know if you have seen streaming on mobiles is quite a difficult thing, and content creation is quite an important core focus of what we do as well. Is that anyone else? Yeah.
Just a second, come to you.
Hi there. When you first set up your what's it called, team?
Yeah.
How did you fund it Do you have to invest your own money out of your own pocket first to get like the players on board? Did you pay them, or was it just a group of friends that just?
When we started, it was basically myself, my brother, a group of friends wanting to be professional, pro players. My game is CS:GO. I love FPS. Really bad at MOBAs, but that's besides the point. So when we started, all we had was sort of like a logo, a name, and about maybe £50 in the pocket between us. The way that we sort of grew is basically turning that £50 into how do we turn that £50 of value into £500. A lot of it is sort of you go into sort of a startup environment, so you have to learn to do things yourself. So a lot of these photos are actually taken by myself. The video content is captured by myself, and then we maybe do sort of create the video content, and then obviously we'll do a lot of the social media management ourselves, data management. So in the background, I run regression models on our social analytics and find that all our graphics content increases engagement compared to non-original content by 50%. Statistics like that I can find, but it's very difficult to process raw data, and that's sort of what I like to do to distinguish ourselves as a high quality sort of team when we go to approach sponsors, and it's something that they appreciate. And it's also what spawned the side company DLC, where we work with ESL creating content because we understand the space, we understand what consumers want, and we understand how to make things entertaining.
That's great, thank you.
I think that's all we have time for. No. Unless anyone's got any more questions.
No, you do have more. Do you guys have any more questions? If not, I have one.
Yes.
If a developer, as a developer,
yes,
people know really well how to work with influencers, but they still don't know how to work with esports teams.
Yes.
So if any of the people here develop a great game, they want to work with esports, how would you recommend them if they want to, for example, work with an esports team, either to start working on the market or even to test and co-develop some features?
So it's very difficult to figure out which teams to approach if you are a developer. I think that when you develop a game, you should sort of put the community first, because esports is essentially the sort of the most engaged part of the community. And not necessarily having one team's perspective is going to be a one-fits-all solution. You have to work with a variety of teams, because different teams might have different specialties. One might specialize in FPS, one might just specialize in MOBAs. So I think a lot of that goes down to sort of the research and the research of the teams themselves and the people that you actually want to be working with, whether they obviously get along with you and whether they can provide the feedback that you're looking for. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give a big hand of applause. Thank you, Daniel.